Welcome to Beverly Unitarian Church. I'm David Schwartz, minister here at Beverly Unitarian, and it's a pleasure to join you in this online service this morning. We welcome all people to this congregation, every color of the rainbow, from every place on earth. Whatever your past is like, whatever your present is like, we invite you to journey into the future together with us. Here, we celebrate a diversity of beliefs, striving always to make space for more. Like other Unitarian Universalist congregations, we affirm 7 principles, not doctrine or dogma, but a shared set of values, moral guides for us. To learn more about those, visit uua.org. I'm delighted to welcome this morning our first guest preacher for our summer services, the Reverend Eileen Wiviott, who serves at the Evanston Unitarian Church. I'm so glad that she's able to be with us this morning. She's going to introduce herself in just a few minutes. We especially welcome visitors, and if today is your first time or one of the first times that you're joining us, I hope that you'll stay for the Zoom coffee hour after the service. We are a friendly, welcoming bunch. The link is going to come at the very, very end of the Sunday service. You can also get it if you're on the mailing list in Friday's email. You can be added to that mailing list by sending a note to beverlyunitarian@gmail.com. We very much look forward to the day when we will be able to meet again in person and meet you again in person. For this moment, let's join together in spirit and prepare our hearts and our minds for worship.
Good morning, members of Beverly Unitarian Church. I am the Reverend Eileen Wiviott, the acting senior minister of the Unitarian Church of Evanston. I'm grateful and honored to be with you in worship today and to take part in this virtual pulpit exchange with my colleagues in the Chicagoland area. Thank you to the Reverend David Schwartz for inviting me to share this virtual pulpit. I'm here in our sanctuary this morning to bring you greetings and well wishes from our congregation to yours. As we join in worship together today, may we be one in spirit and in service to our larger faith. Our opening words are from the Reverend Teresa I. Soto, from their book Spilling the Light, and their poem, The Life Slow and Precious. By virtue of being alive, you matter. And you cannot be more deserving of dignity, of respect, of love. Sometimes people make mistakes, but even that cannot change that you are meant to be festooned with celebration of your humanity. If your progress is slow, your movements small, remember that you don't have to compete for compassion. You don't have to compare what you can observe of another's life to make sure that you measure up. You are definitely yourself. What is slow is also valuable. Some of the oldest seeds ever sprouted are narrow-leafed campion that grew even though the seeds were 32,000 years old, more or less. They had to survive to be able to bloom, encased in ice, thawed, and brought to life. The most important thing is that you make it. No matter how imperceptible the movement, how long it takes to reach the best version of who you are meant to be. You are irreplaceable. You are meant to live.
We shall be known by the company we keep, by the ones who circle round to tend these fires. We shall be known by the ones who sow and reap the seeds of change alive from deep within the earth. It is time now. It is time now that we thrive. It is time we lead ourselves into the well. It is time now, and what a time to be alive. In this great turning we shall learn to lead in love. In this great turning we shall learn to lead in love. We shall be known by the company we keep, by the ones who circle round to tend these fires. We shall be known by the ones who sow and reap the seeds of change alive from deep within the earth. It is time now. It is time now that we thrive. It is time we lead ourselves into the well. It is time now. And what a time to be alive. In this great turning we shall learn to lead in love. In this great turning we shall learn to lead in love. We shall be known by the company we keep, by the ones who circle round to tend these fires. We shall be known by the ones who sow and reap the seeds of change alive from deep within the earth. It is time now. It is time now that we thrive. It is time we lead ourselves into the well. It is time now, and what a time to be alive. In this great turning we shall learn to lead in love. In this great turning we shall learn to lead in love. In this great turning we shall learn to lead in love. In this great turning we shall learn to lead in love.
Friends, will you join me in the words of our covenant, the commitment that we make to each other about what it is we're doing here, why we gather, who we're becoming, and who we are. Love is the spirit of this church, and service its law. This is our great covenant, to dwell together in peace, to seek the truth in love, and to help one another. I invite you to warmly greet those who have gathered today in the chat, remembering it's public. Say hello. Welcome.
Our story for all ages this morning is called Perfecting Patience from Kindness, a treasury of Buddhist wisdom for children and parents, collected and adapted by Sarah Conover. About a century ago, one of the most beloved Buddhist teachers in Tibet was a wandering monk named Patrul Rinpoche. Despite the fact that he was a learned scholar, he often dressed in rags as he wandered about the mountains, disguised even from his followers. He disregarded many of the trappings of religious practice and instead focused on the essential essence of spiritual life. Often he played the role of a trickster to make his point. One time, Patrul wanted to pay a visit to a famous hermit, an old man who had hidden for 20 years in a remote mountain cave. Patrul journeyed from one village to the next, asking for advice as to the hermit's whereabouts. Finally, a day's walk from any town, he spied some prayer flags marking the entrance to a cave. Patrul strode right in without any formalities, as if he'd been long expected for a visit. He stood silently, a wide grin on his sun-wrinkled face, while his eyes grew accustomed to the dark. "Who are you?" issued a flat, deep voice from the back of the cave. "Isn't that the big question all of us are trying to answer?" exclaimed Patrul. "Who are you?" he asked in return, still grinning. The old hermit didn't reply. "Why are you here?" asked the deep voice again after a while. "Aha!" chuckled Patrul. "Now you've hit the nail on the head. That's the other big question. Why are you here? Why am I here? Why you? Why me? Why any of us?" Patrul let out a large belly laugh at his own joke. It rang loudly through the cave. Patrul then approached the meditating master and sat down across from him on the dirt floor. "Well, what's the view like from here?" he wondered as he made himself comfortable. "It's sure not much to speak of," he exclaimed after a few moments. The hermit was doing his best to stay unaffected by this noisy visitor. His breathing remained steady and slow. His eyes remained shut. Patrul stared at him. "What are you thinking about over there?" Patrul finally asked. "Sir," the old hermit replied in a voice not quite as deep or calm as before, "I am thinking of the same thing that I have contemplated for 20-odd years, patience." The hermit kept his eyes shut while he spoke. "I have lived in this cave by myself all that time. Here I meditate. I watch the days come and go, and I feel the seasons quietly turn. A person with less strength than I would grow restless with this slow pace of life. But with many years of effort behind me, I have perfected the noble art of patience." "Oh, that's very wonderful," proclaimed Patrul. "Let me give it a try." He imitated the old hermit as best he could, matching his own breath with the hermit's steady, slow breath. Finally, he closed his eyes as well. After some time, Patrul leaned over and tickled the old hermit gently in the ribs. "Hey, psst," Patrul whispered. "What's your secret? This is boring." "Sir," the hermit blurted as his eyes opened wide, "why can't you lead me to my quiet retreat? Please, leave my cave at once." "I will leave if you wish," Patrul replied, "but it looks as if your patience has left before me." The moral of the story, of course, is that being patient alone is easy. Being patient in community and with others takes a lifetime of practice.
I invite you now to join with me in a spirit of prayer and meditation. Be where you are. Let this place hold you up. Let yourself be grounded. Let yourself be elevated. Spirit of life and of love, called by many names, known in many ways, experienced in many ways. Our hope and our prayer this morning is to remember who we are and to remember who we're called into becoming. To remember that it takes work day by day to answer that call. To remember that we are beloved exactly as we are, and that we're invited into a larger and larger life. Spirit of life, spirit of love, that force that lives between two people when they meet each other wholly, face to face. Our hope and our prayer this morning is to remember ourselves exactly so that we can turn to face the world again, to serve the world, to be of use, not in grand and great ways, but in the everyday ways of our everyday living. Amen. Throughout the week, we have full lives. We have experiences of joy and of sorrow, and on Sundays we come to put these experiences, to put the fullness, the richness of our lives into each other's hands. We share our joys and we share our sorrows with each other. And I invite you in just a moment to put those into the chat. When we meet in person, we light candles for these. And so in the chat, if you have a joy or a sorrow that's too tender to be spoken aloud, to be typed aloud, enter in I, as if you were raising two fingers in silence, just like we would in person, to light a candle for you in silence. I invite you now to trust those joys and sorrows into each other's hands.
When I rise, I will rise like a bird, joyfully. And when I fall, I will fall like a leaf, gracefully. When I rise, I will rise like a bird, joyfully. And when I fall, I will fall like a leaf, gracefully. When I rise, I will rise like a bird, joyfully. And when I fall, I will fall like a leaf, gracefully.
Our reading this morning is from Martin Luther King Jr.'s letter from Birmingham City Jail, written in 1963, while he served a sentence for participating in civil rights demonstrations. He was responding to a letter written by 8 prominent white liberal clergymen urging him to be patient with social change. Here are his words, modified only to include all genders. For years now, I have heard the words wait. It rings in the ear of every Negro with a piercing familiarity. This wait has almost always meant never. It has been a tranquilizing thalidomide, relieving the emotional stress for a moment, only to give birth to an ill-formed infant of frustration. We must come to see with the distinguished jurist of yesterday that justice too long delayed is justice denied. We have waited for more than 340 years for our constitutional and God-given rights. There is a tragic misconception of time. It is the strangely irrational notion that there is something in the very flow of time that will inevitably cure all ills. Actually, time is neutral. It can be used either destructively or constructively. I am coming to feel that the people of ill will have used time much more effectively than the people of goodwill. We will have to repent in this generation, not merely for the vitriolic words and actions of the bad people, but for the appalling silence of the good people. You must come to see that human progress never rolls in on wheels of inevitability. It comes through the tireless efforts and persistent work of those willing to be co-workers with God. And without this hard work, time itself becomes an ally of the forces of social stagnation. We must use time creatively and forever realize that the time is always ripe to do right. Now is the time to make real the promise of democracy and transform our pending national elegy into a creative psalm of kinship. Now is the time to lift our national policy from the quicksand of racial injustice to the solid rock of human dignity.
Will you sing with me? There's more love somewhere. There is more love somewhere. There is more love somewhere. I'm gonna keep on till I find it. There is more love somewhere. There is more hope somewhere. There is more hope somewhere. I'm gonna keep on till I find it. There is more hope somewhere. There is more peace somewhere. There is more peace somewhere. I'm gonna keep on till I find it. There is more peace somewhere. There is more joy somewhere. There is more joy somewhere. We're gonna keep on till we find it. There is more joy somewhere.
Sacred texts and age-old stories claim that love is patient and kind, that slow and steady wins the race, that nice people are patient people. Patience has been an elusive quality for me for as long as I can remember. There are moments seared into memory when, as a new, unexperienced teacher, and even more as a new mother, impatience Like a bird of prey swooped down and snatched my centered calm in an instant. Thankfully, those moments are fewer and farther between than they used to be. With age, I've had more time to add to the accumulated moments of allowing life to be what it is. Still, I know patience will be a lifelong practice for me. There are countless ways of developing a spiritual practice of patience, from taking deep breaths at a stoplight to washing the dishes mindfully, paying attention while walking the dog, or spending 20 minutes in a seated meditation every day. A regular spiritual practice can build our resilience and our ability to manage the stresses of our lives. Whatever our practice of patience, it must begin with ourselves, usually the hardest place to start. Only you know the full weight of what you carry as you move through the world. Only you have the complete picture of what it is you are struggling against to make it through each day. And only you have within you the precise alchemy of what you need to navigate the complex interweaving of suffering, joy, and possibility unfolding through your life. Recovering that wisdom from the archaeological dig that is your soul, buried in the world's rubble, will take some time and your patience. Affording ourselves patience with our precious hearts has to precede the patience we build up for others. Love is patient and kind, and it takes a lifetime of practice to grow patience in ourselves and in our relationships. As a young mother, I was only able to begin to relax a little and enjoy the magnificent gift that parenthood can be when I figured out that I needed to lessen the expectations I had of myself. The expectation that I needed to be the perfect mother, never angry or cross. I had zero tolerance for my own shortcomings or impatience, which only diminished the patience I had with my children. Practicing patience with others is a key component of any relationship, and relationship building is at the heart of creating a more just, equitable, and peaceful world. We need one another. We don't just need those who we get along with. We don't just need those who are aligned with us politically, socially, economically, who share our identities and experiences. We need everyone to make the world whole. And for that, we will need patience. Oh, Lord, will we need patience? It's hard to be patient with those we strongly disagree with, who have different priorities and values. Forget that. It's hard to have patience with the ones who share our own values, who we love the most. We are each separate individuals, interconnected in this increasingly crowded and rapidly changing planet. Being patient with each other requires patient listening, really listening to one another and working to set aside our assumptions and our counter-arguments. Nonviolent or compassionate communication, founded by Marshall Rosenberg, can be a useful tool in practicing patience in relationship. Compassionate communication involves naming what is happening objectively without judgment or criticism. It involves identifying what you are feeling about what is happening using I statements, thinking about what you need, and then asking for what you need. I have found these tools really helpful at times when having difficult conversations. We can practice listening for the needs that reside under angry words, expressions of fear and actions of division. This is not about accepting unacceptable behavior. This is about building our listening skills and our compassion muscles. So I hope by this point I've made it clear that patience is a valuable spiritual practice, and maybe I've given you a few useful strategies for practicing patience with yourself and others. And yet, the call for patience can clash with the urgent cry for justice and the need for us to act boldly and swiftly in response to any number of critical issues. Demanding patience can be a way of silencing resistance to change. Patience and impatience can both be a spiritual practice. We are an increasingly anxious, brittle, and petulant species in an increasingly alarming world. We are rapidly approaching the brink of climate devastation from which we cannot return. Black lives continue to be devalued and destroyed. People are flooding to our border from desperation to degradation and despair, with little or no hope of turning back or finding safety. And progressive voters are being systematically disenfranchised. There are things toward which we are called by love to cultivate a posture of patience, and there are things toward which we should remain steadfastly impatient. As Dr. Martin Luther King preached, there are things to which we should remain maladjusted. He said, I never intend to become adjusted to segregation and discrimination. I never intend to become adjusted to religious bigotry. I never intend to adjust myself to economic conditions that will take necessities from the many and give luxuries to the few. I never intend to adjust myself to the madness of militarism, to self-defeating effects of physical violence. Can we hold in creative tension both urgency and patient persistence? The ethos of nonviolent resistance is centered around the paradox of civil disobedience, of being patiently impatient, of neither submission nor violence, but a third way, as Christian author and teacher Walter Wink describes in his book, Jesus and Nonviolence. There is a third way beyond our primal response of fight or flight, which is nonviolent resistance to injustice. Wink writes, most Christians desire nonviolence, yes, but they are not talking about nonviolent struggle for justice. They mean simply the absence of conflict. They would like the system to change without having to be involved in changing it. Neutrality in a situation of oppression always supports the status quo. The practice of nonviolence is not about doing nothing or waiting submissively for the world to become what we know it should be. It is a creative action of resilience and resistance. We will need creativity to respond to the urgency of this moment without further violence and harm. We will need to hold together patience with each other and impatience with systems of oppression and violence. There is a creative tension in the practice of holding in one hand patience with ourselves and each other, of cultivating that practice every day and as many times a day as we can, to breathe into our human uniqueness, beauty, and imperfection. We must hold that practice in tension with impatience toward the systems of oppression that capitalize on scarcity and fear. Friends, I am so tired of fear and scarcity ruling the day. I have grown weary of the acceptance of unacceptable behavior in the name of capitalism. I have grown impatient with abuse of power. I am impatient with the ability of our leaders to turn away from the reality of climate change and the failure of imagination and moral courage to demand we do something right now. We need one another to practice building our capacity for patience with each other so we don't give up on the transformative power of love, so that we never lose faith in our resilience, in the possibility of goodness in humanity. We need one another to rededicate ourselves to being impatient with the status quo. A spiritual practice of patience can take the shape of listening, breathing, singing, weeping, lamenting, or creating beauty. Remind yourself, it is a practice. You can't do it right, and you can't do it wrong, and you can't do it alone. The same is true of a spiritual practice of impatience. A spiritual practice of impatience calls us to write letters to the editor, to write and call our lawmakers, to show up, to witness and demand and listen and sing, move, breathe, weep, and lament together. Again, there is no correct amount or right way to practice impatience. It is cumulative and collective. Can we practice patiently asking questions and listening to one another as we wrestle with what it means to live in a white supremacist society, while at the same time practicing impatience with the very real impacts of that white supremacist system on the lives of people of color? Can we practice impatiently dismantling that system? Can we practice patience with each other as we consider possible solutions to our broken immigration system while remaining fervently impatient with our government for leaving thousands of asylum seekers languishing at our border? Can we practice patience with the feeling of being completely overwhelmed by the enormity of the climate crisis, by the sense of immobilization that comes when we don't know where to begin or how we can make a difference, while voicing our righteous impatience with climate change denial? However you practice, may you feel encouraged to stay in the struggle to slowly and imperfectly build power, resilience, and revolutionary love. Beloveds, you are enough. We are enough, and there's too much work to be done, and it's too important to rush it. As we strive to make the world whole, let us hold one another and ourselves with holy patience and impatient love. May it be so. May we make it so. As we extinguish the chalice flame, please join in saying these words by Barnaby Fetter. May our fumbling tongues be blessed so that chatter becomes prayer and prayer becomes concerted action. May our restless minds be blessed so that insight becomes will and will becomes effective action. Breathe into patience with yourself. Listen into patience with each other, and hold fast to your creative patience with the world made whole yet to be. Go making peace.